This
Um,
conference will now be recorded.
Thank you. So first one that we'll get to in a minute. Are you continuing to work on climate adaptation and resilience amidst the COVID-19 emergency? Are you, oh, come on, sorry. That was unexpected. Ay, ay, ay. Well, I clicked on something and the end of my screen went away. So let's see. Let's just stop sharing the screen. Hold on a second, folks. Give me a second here. I've been working with Zoom all week, and it's back to GoToMeeting since that's what BayCAN's been using, and I'm having a hard time seeing where I'm going to. There we go. Thank you. So we're on to a view now where we can see each of you that have your camera working. So we're happy if you're just on audio, but if your camera is working and you're willing to share, nice to see you as well. So as I was saying, we've got three questions. The first one's, are you continuing to work on climate adaptation and resilience amidst the emergency, and kind of how you're doing that? Some tips maybe for the others. Second, how could BayCAN help you over the next few weeks and next few months as we are going to be in this COVID-19 emergency for a number of weeks, at least months, probably. Hopefully, it'll be months and not something longer. And then finally, we're going to look at just a bit of one resilience spotlight, some work that the state is doing, looking at wildfires and the COVID-19 emergency. So I think we'll do introductions since we have about 20 people. We'll do introductions as we speak. So instead of going around and doing them right now, we're happy to see all of you. Please mute your phones if you're not muted already, and we'll start right in. Again, welcome. We really appreciate you taking some time here while we are all amidst this extraordinary emergency that we are now a part of. So the first question for the hour-long meeting here is, are you able to work on climate adaptation and resilience amidst the COVID-19, and how are you doing that? And maybe some hints or tips as to how you have adapted your work to work within the emergency. So I'll lead off since I've got the mic right now. That I work for both BayCAN and at the university for the Climate Readiness Institute and a new network we have there on campus. And last week we did a 40-person workshop for bringing people from around the country. In theory, we were supposed to have them all here for one in-person meeting, and we adapted it to Zoom. We shortened the meetings. We cut the sessions down to 2 hours, so we had 4 hours of work in a day instead of 8, which was one compromise really with using a remote meeting setup. But it worked very well. And I'm sure you've had that experience, or some of you have had that experience already. Other things have had to stop that I'm working on because people, say at the university with research projects, are just are too busy right now. All the classes have been moved to Zoom. We're dealing with a lot of new things there, so we've throttled back on some of the work that we're doing to support research there. And I've also canceled my 6-week trip to Russia and Central Asia and China. So instead, I'm reading Travels in Siberia and other things, which I'm sure some of you are doing as well. So that's a bit of my little story. I'm also trying at our house to do one new thing every day that's for someone who's in more trouble than we are, since we have good resources here. And so that's been a good exercise, and maybe we'll up it to 2 or 3 as we get better at it. David Bihar, you're on. Would you go next and just say a little bit about it? Are you working on this, and how are you doing it?
Hi, yes. I'm reading Travels in Siberia too. It's weird. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not. my last meeting was with you, Bruce, in Sacramento when an assemblyman insisted on shaking our hands. I think I'm almost at my quarantine level now, so that didn't result in any contagiousness. But the first big meeting we had was the Hyperfacets meeting that you helped organize with Andy Jones, and it was on Zoom, and there were 20 or 30 people, and it was extremely good. It was really I think a seamless process that you guys put together and worked really well in sharing information on what we're working on related to climate and vulnerability. So that was a hopeful introduction to telecommuting. I want to there's a lot of other work that can be done. I just sent a review request to internal in San Francisco for some policies that we've drafted inside the PUC on climate, kind of a climate policy 3-page document that links to our strategic plan. And I think people can review that and look at that for us and get us comments back. The next step of it is going to be presentation to our senior management. And I think that's something that can't go through unless I put together a special, here's the response from my reviewer, unless I put together a special Zoom meeting for that. So that might move a little bit more slowly. I'm going to get to the assessment to adaptation work group that BayCAN members asked to be one of our next initiatives. So that's coming up. And Bruce, you've had some great meetings that have indicated some good stuff that can happen with that. And then my goal, of course, is to catch up on reading as much as possible. There's a lot of articles that need to be read, and I'm working on a journal article, and that's continuing as well. And I need to read enough that's hard to do at the office to feed into that work. So I think it's moving along, and I'm adjusting to. I went into the office yesterday, kind of creepy and weird because it was empty, and I thought COVID was everywhere. But picked up some files and have set up my desk at home to work on this stuff. So it's moving along.
Good. Thanks, David. Sarah Church, I know your whole group at Alameda County, you've told us, has moved working remotely and it's working well, but give us a couple of reasons maybe why it's working well, some hints.
Sure. Well, first, it's just good to see all the familiar names and connect. And our team has worked remotely. Many of us have worked remotely for a day here or there on a regular schedule. So we had the capacity, we were able to hit the ground running. Also, because we're a sustainability team, we had created resources already about how to run a good virtual meeting, how to manage remote workers, how to be a remote worker, because we were trying to promote, cut down on commuting, travel, and also, resources like paper that are used when you're in person. So we've actually shifted into a role of helping provide those resources throughout the county. We know a lot of functions are hamstrung by the fact that they can't be at their workstations, and we're thinking of our colleagues. We also see this as a resilience, obviously approach, which is that if we can make sure that county operations are flexible and can happen like aren't location dependent, then it actually makes all the service provision of our county more resilient. So we're kind of working on that from many fronts, and are thinking now creatively about how, can we provide training or whatever it is that can help make this go well, so that it goes well during coronavirus and we can get all our services out and done, and also so that it builds to our more resilient services in the future. So a couple other things we're up to quickly. We are in the midst of CAP update planning, and so we've divided all of our tasks for that into near term and long term. Everything that engages another partner is long term, because we don't want to be bothering people with this right now, particularly because our public health partners are so key. So we're doing, whatever it is, the looking back, the reflection, the mapping, history kind of pieces. We are also pleased to have seen, I've spoken, I think, at BayCAN about the community partners list, which is a subscription within our alert system that goes, we learned that frontline communities affected by wildfire smoke wanted to hear messages about protecting themselves from health threats through community organizations rather than just from the government only. and providing translation and so on. So that list was used to help share coronavirus resources, and we hope it'll be used in the future. I can provide that if people are interested in that. It's a little hard to build right now, but there may be community organizations that want those messages. So get in touch if you want that. And the last thing I just wanted to mention is that I've been on a few kind of calls and emails and lists around the Urban Sustainability Directors Network and also Government Alliance on Race and Equity. And a lot of those groups are talking about how to do community engagement during this period. If you have a grant and you're supposed to be doing that, or just how do we move forward, hearing from our community about what they need from an equity perspective. And so there's a lot of buzz. Some of you may be in on that buzz, but we can, I think, bring those resources that are being compiled into BayCAN as well. So.
Great. Thank you, Sarah, and thank you, David. That's a couple of our leaders from BayCAN. So let's open the floor up now. So I'm happy to see, I can see on the chart that everybody is muted. So if you would like to offer something here, how is it working for you, and what could you offer to others that might be a tip or a lesson learned so far that would help in terms of doing the climate work amidst this emergency? So I'll open the floor. Anyone can take the floor at this point. And if you don't, I'll start calling on people. Just unmute yourself and identify yourself and tell us what you're doing. Yeah.
Hey Bruce, this is Shay here. This is Shay Rajagopal with the Contra Costa Water District. And yeah, I just wanted to share that just like Bruce and David mentioned, I was part of that hyperfacets call as well. I think there's a lot of teleworking that's going on at our district. We have mostly, at least tried to get those folks who can work from home to work from home. And there are still a few who do come into work because their work potentially requires them to look at files that are not yet digitized and have to still refer to them. So at least we are minimizing exposure to such individuals. And in terms of working on climate related work, I think the work has to go on. I mean, in the midst of this COVID-19 crisis, I mean, clearly we are looking at a potential drought too, and I think planning for that is critical. And basically, I think what's happening in the planning and operations group is they're really looking at how we can change, let's say, worker schedules so that folks who are absolutely essential to keeping the service going are protected and continue to be able to work, and backup plans are being put into place where everybody is actually we're making a master list of who has alternate skills that could be called upon in case we kind of run out of other folks who are let's say sick. So those are some things that I think we are doing in terms of planning and preparing, because we clearly don't know how long this is going to last. So these are some things that I wanted to share in terms of what the district is working on and how we're dealing with this. But in terms of reaching out to BayCAN, I think it'll be good to hear from others as well in terms of what are some good practices that they are employing so that we can all benefit from this at least use this disaster to see how we can really improve upon our own game. So I'll be happy to hear from others.
Thank you, Shay. Thank you. How about Marin County? I see that both Alex and Jack Liebster are on the line. One or both of you, what's working in Marin, or how's this going in Marin, and what could you share with us?
We're continuing. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay, great. We're continuing to work on our program. Slowed down a little bit, but we're putting together, for example, our schedules of the meetings that we are going to need to hold, and reorienting them to telecommunications. We finally purchased Zoom, and we're going to be able to use that in the way that you're using WebEx here. I'm very excited to see this, something I wanted to see for a long time, so that we could in fact reduce all the time and GHG gases that we create when we drive around the Bay Area for meetings. And so we're going to be doing the same thing here and trying to keep on schedule. Obviously, we're going to be pushed back to some degree, and we've already talked to our grant funders about that, and we're waiting to hear back exactly how they're going to deal with both the schedules that we have for deliverables and the ultimate deadline that we have on our grants. The Coastal Conservancy has indicated that they do have some flexibility on that, but not complete flexibility, because their funding sources have statutory deadlines and can't be moved past that.
Got it.
So that's where we are right now.
Well, thank you, Jack. Sounds like good progress. Alex, you're running Project Drawdown in Marin Drawdown. Have you found that people are not wanting to talk about climate? It's too much right now to do, or are you finding you can move ahead some or adapt it?
Hi, everyone. I think it depends. So I've heard, mixed things from all the different groups that we're working with. I did host a 2.5-hour Zoom meeting yesterday, and that went really well. That group, though, they were already established, and we had planned for this virtual meeting several weeks ago. So I think mentally they were, ready for that. I've received some resistance just in general to participate in virtual meetings. We're going to have a meeting next week with our steering committee, so that should be interesting. I think the internal work.
Alex, hold on just a minute. We're getting some bad feedback. There's a speaker on somewhere, folks. If you have a speaker on, could you turn it off, please? It's somehow feeding
Alex,
back here.
You're not in by phone and computer, are you?
No, just on the phone.
Okay.
I did that once. Okay.
Okay, why don't you finish up, Alex? Thanks.
Is it still bad?
No, it's fine now, or it's better.
Okay.
Thanks.
Sorry about that. So yeah, the internal working groups, we have several focus groups that are designing these local solutions. I think that it will be easier to use virtual meeting options, and they're already cohesive groups, and so that's good. Had a couple of meetings last week too via Zoom. They definitely require structure though, so I still need to be there to facilitate, which is great and okay. We have a separate process. It's not separate, but it's kind of, it's external versus internal. And we're still figuring out how to do that exactly. This is working with several of our community-based organizations, and honestly, they're serving their communities right now, and their priorities are not climate change. That doesn't mean that they're not interested in working with us still. We're offering a storytelling training, for example, but it's just things are delayed. So just accepting that and checking in with them. We're also looking at some virtual training opportunities. So we had planned a day-long DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion retreat. So we're looking at doing that over a series of webinars now, which I'm actually kind of excited about. So yeah, we're adapting.
Good. Paloma, Pavel, you signed on early on, right at 10. Let me call on you and see how are things going with the community groups you're working with in your work.
Thank you. One of the things that we've been working on, is this Bruce speaking?
Yes, it is. Hi, Paloma.
Hello to everyone. How many people are on the call?
25 at this point.
25, thank you. So I just want to share the time well. So one of the places that we're working on is preparing for a EJ summit for the state of California creating environmental justice curriculum for the state. So this has taken on a new urgency, and we've gone to a virtual format rather than an in-person 2-day summit. But that we've been putting a lot of our attention into that going well, and having immediate as well as long-term effects. In preparation for that, we've been meeting with EJ groups throughout the state and helping to build partnerships so that there's a lot of programming that has been immediately needed for teachers working, responding to the lockdown. So we're working on kind of immediate fronts of how to have nature and environmental education be part of the emergency response that teachers are making within the schools. And then we're also building long-term curriculum linking environmental justice and things like the COVID crisis to curriculum in the state. So that's the short end. You can be in touch with us at Breakthrough Communities based in Oakland.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Paloma. Who else? Patrick O'Day, how about City of Alameda? Are you having to adapt the work, or is it pretty much going forward? Are people getting pulled away, as we know at some cities, to work completely on COVID-19? What's up in Alameda, Patrick?
Sure. Hello, everyone. Good to be on the call with you all. My work on climate has definitely gotten affected a lot. We were set to do, I would say, present our first annual report on our climate action and resiliency plan on Tuesday, March 17th, which was the day that everything on the agenda got canceled, and the city council meeting became a council-only meeting that was devoted to COVID-19. So everything has gotten slowed down and pushed back, and my work has shifted. I'm mostly now working on our getting ready for urban forestry plan for the city. But yeah, a lot of things are probably going to change here on the revenue side, especially. We were looking at, I guess this is a little bit more mitigation related, but we were looking at a utility user tax and maybe even a small gasoline tax as kind of a way to tax carbon in the city. And those conversations are pushed out indefinitely. We were considering up to $125 million infrastructure bond for the ballot in November, and that is not going to be considered anymore. So yeah, things are pretty slowed down here, and some of the money that we were hoping to potentially start to bring in is probably not going to go to the ballot. In terms of citywide impacts, yeah, we're doing different things, rotating people through the office, having different, dividing our maintenance crews into different cohorts to try and increase resiliency if people get sick, trying to change rules to make it easier to bring new people on or bring people out of retirement, that kind of whole thing. And let me see what else I can think of here.
Well, that's good for now, Patrick. That's
yeah,
helpful.
sure.
Yeah,
I would
helpful.
say that.
Go ahead.
Oh, could I just add a couple things?
Yeah.
I guess I'm curious about the big stimulus package and what, if any of that, is going to come into infrastructure and what role BayCAN could play in helping advocate for how that gets allocated toward climate resiliency projects at the local level. And then another two of the opportunities that seem up right now are one, our city just completely changed its policy on telecommuting, which was not allowed at all up until last week. And so again, that's more on the greenhouse gas reduction side, but seems like there's an opportunity to try and encourage a more permanent shift towards telecommuting across different sectors where that's an option. And then also just in my own home, uh, we have a garden and we don't eat out of it that much, but we have been eating through the garden the last week because it's just more difficult to go to the grocery store. So in terms of kind of local bottom up resiliency, I feel like now would be a great time to do education and try to spread resources for people who want to grow more food in their backyard and reduce their carbon footprint and increase local resiliency that way.
Great, good. Thank you, Patrick. Good ideas there. Well, I'll add in a couple of things on money, and then we'll get to more of your voices here. Please mute your phones if you're not muted, because somebody's giving us feedback here from a speaker. Thank you. Hopefully that takes care of it. Some of us were in Sacramento. Actually, the last meeting I had in person with anybody. Folks, somebody's got a speaker on. Looks like it might be initials AP. If you could please mute your phone so we don't get this feedback. I'll wait a second. Stand by, folks. Yikes. Alex, is it you? It looks like on the chart that you're not muted, and I'd hate to mute everybody. It just becomes
Bruce, phone people don't show. I'm phoning in because I can't get my audio to work on my laptop,
Yep.
and phone people don't show muted when they mute their phones.
Okay. All right. Okay, but sounds like we're better for now anyway. Thank you. Just in terms of money, as you may know, the governor had proposed a climate bond, a resilience bond, and there was also a version of that in the Assembly and a version of that in the state Senate. And the idea was to work between the three versions between now in May or June to get an agreement on a climate resilience bond, water, drought, some sea level rise and heat and all that would go on the ballot in November. Well, we were told this week that that's, as you might expect, probably not going to happen. It's not dead. We're waiting to see kind of how this goes, obviously with big question marks in California, but with the hits to the state budget, the idea, or the hits to pocketbooks and to cities and counties, the idea of putting a good size bond issue for climate in November on the ballot is a lot more questionable, to say the least, at this point. We also had some discussions in Sacramento with legislators and staff who are working on various other bills that could also provide funding from various sources, increased funding for climate adaptation. And those are all a big question mark right now. We were told that the January budget that Newsom put out, as you do in January, and then it gets revised through May and agreed upon in June, that January budget was, one staff person said, rather irrelevant at this point, because now with COVID-19 and the spending and the priorities that are going to shift there. So just when we were getting to some proposals for some really substantial increases in money for adaptation, it looks like we're going to have to probably wait a little bit longer on that. That's okay. It's not the end of our world, and certainly this emergency takes precedence. Who else?
This
and
is
we can
Carl.
get to this. Yeah, go ahead, Carl.
This is Carl Anthony. Yeah, I wanted to just tap on to that last go round, and that is that we've been working a lot with the communities that are the most strategically hurt by climate change, and who've had the least to do with actually creating the problem. So I'm wondering if in the next go round, if the advocates could really figure out some way to put a piece in that whatever budget to go forward, so that we can actually fund some of the community-based organizations that haven't been able to get funding anywhere else. And it's a really important idea now that, particularly as we're making the shift to a new economy, that we need to build in some response to the groups that have been left behind in the other previous economies. So I just want to make a note of that. I think we're going to be making more of a fuss about that the next go round.
Good, Carl. And we will send out, one of the things we can do this week is resend the budget material that we came across, that we were given a couple of weeks ago. And you'll see there are a number of proposals there, since it's all proposals and bill language that can be amended and all at this point. But there are a number of proposals, both in the bond and in the companion legislation, in terms of dealing with vulnerable communities and dealing with underserved communities, disadvantaged communities in terms of climate adaptation and all. So we can get to the second question now too, as you're telling us kind of what you're running into, and the second question being, what specific help would you like from BayCAN that different from, the normal things we're doing? We're doing webinars, we're doing personal consultations. We did 2 of them this week, and we have 2 more scheduled for tomorrow, where we talk just one-on-one with you about how we can help your organization. We have our newsletter. We have the equity working group that Yeshi's pushing forward. David's working on getting the assessment to adaptation working group going. We have sub-regional meetings coming up on the 13th, 14th, and 15th, and those will be virtual, not in person, so we'll have more on that. But those are our general things. Tell us, if you would, when you grab the mic here, how could BayCAN more specifically help you with this COVID-19 / climate emergency that we're in? So I'll open the floor to anyone. Tell us what you're doing. How could BayCAN help?
So I'd like to get in
line. People can announce themselves, who they are.
Yes, and announce yourself, please, when you're starting. Thank you. So go ahead.
So this is Carl Anthony again. I want to get in line. I just spoke a moment ago, but.
Okay, Carl, take the floor. Come on.
Well, we worked a lot on with the Bay, the issue of sea level rise, and we got to a point where we had actually made some amendments to the Bay plan, but it was clear that the agreements had been made with all of the jurisdictions, and it seems like BayCAN could actually coordinate the relationship with the jurisdictions. But then it's the same issue with the strategically the communities that have been left behind have not been part of that process. So I'd like to see some kind of mechanism that reaches out to communities that have been excluded, to be sure that, as we're looking at responding to sea level rise, and also with new amendments that have been made to the state legislature that require some adjustments in the city plans, that they include an element that deals with environmental justice.
Good, thank you, Carl. And the next item probably on the sea level rise agenda regionally is BCDC and others are working to start to develop, or developing the process that will develop a 6-month process for a regional shoreline adaptation strategy or approach. And that's going to be one of the next ball games here. Who's next? Who would like to talk about something either BayCAN can do for us, or tell us something, tell the group something, share something that's working for you in terms of doing this work right now?
Hi, this is Lindy Lowe. I work for the Port of San Francisco, and we are in the midst of developing alternatives for both a bond project for seismic risk, as well as alternatives for an Army Corps flood study. So we're in this very interesting inflection point where we're moving from our assessment into alternatives development, and in some ways, it's not a great time to be doing that because that's really when you want to be in rooms with people, you want to have things on the wall, you want to really be working through with, as Carl says, community members and stakeholders and tenants from the port's perspective and other city departments. And I think while we're advancing some of the sort of core pieces of the puzzle for this alternatives development process and will be well poised, I think we're struggling a little bit with both how do we get people involved in this in a way that feels inviting and participatory, but won't be in person. And then what will happen when people can get back into rooms together, but may still feel wary about doing so? And are we thinking about what best practices look like when we start to get people back into rooms together? And will there be some members of our society who won't be able to come back into rooms together for even longer?
Excellent. And a very good, I think, point there, Lindy, that no matter how long this lasts, when we go back, we are not going back to the normal world, at least not right away, even though with most disasters, if you read the literature, people want to go back to, what they were familiar with and what they had before, whether it's a fire that burns their community down or something else. But I think we recognize, and I think you're talking about it, that things are going to be different here, period. And especially with all of the unknowns, even if we get the kind of all clear in a couple of months or weeks to start having meetings again, how that's going to affect when we know that the virus could come back and all of that. Excellent. Who's next? Who would like to share something with us they're doing, or a question, or something they'd like BayCAN to do to help out?
I have my hand up, but I can wait too. This is
Okay.
Paloma Pavel with Breakthrough Communities.
Well, Paloma, go ahead.
Thank you. It was wonderful to hear from Lindy Lowe just now. I believe, Lindy, that we have worked together in the past at the Bay Conservation and Development Commission, and you led community engagement processes there that were really gold standard. So I think what we want to say at this moment, two things. One is that we have made progress in the last decade, bringing community groups together so that we are poised to be more collaborative partners in agency and governmental processes, exactly as she described. So call on us and we will mobilize and respond. And we've also found ways to make it easier and more coherent for agencies and electeds to work with community groups on various issues. And as we know, whether it's sea level rise or COVID, as Carl said, the most vulnerable communities are always on the front lines of this, so that we need to see these as interrelated. We also wanted to draw attention to good resources that BayCAN could help to share. There's a new report out by USC, Dr. Manuel Pastor and Chris Benner, on something called Solidarity Economics. It came out yesterday. And it's a report on how the interrelatedness of environmental issues, economic divides, and going forward is needed in a new way. And he's calling for something called Solidarity Economics. And it's a very well-written report put out by USC, and their group there is PERE, P-E-R-E, Policy on Environment and Regional Equity, Project on Environment and Regional Equity. So that's one resource. And then today, the UN environmental leader posted an article on linking the virus to environmental and also economic issues that was really quite poignant. And I can forward those to you, both of them, Bruce, and making vetted materials that are well done that can help all of us move forward together in thoughtful ways, because there's no going back. We're clear on that.
Thank you, Paloma. And let me just put out that call that if you run across articles or reports, or I was sent a webinar link yesterday from Canada that tied response to COVID-19 to climate change work directly. When you run across things like that, please send them to me and we will compile. BayCAN can do that in the next week. So send your links to me, send any reports you find or articles or studies or talks that anyone's giving on that whole notion of how you bring the two together. And we will compile and send out. Julia Kim, you're with both BayCAN and with ARCA dealing with the 8 ARCA chapters around the state. Anything you're hearing that you could pass on here that would be interesting for our group?
Yeah, most folks are moving virtual, of course. There are some regions who are looking at how to make the connection between what's happening with COVID and back to climate change in a sensitive manner, of course. There is this opportunity where we're seeing this emergency play out in real time, but at the same time want to be very sensitive to the gravity of this situation and how it's impacting folks directly. With that said, I know the Capital Region Climate Readiness Collaborative, they're planning for an April workshop that would explore the regional economic development efforts and initiatives throughout the state and connecting that back to climate. We're now moving that to virtual and expanding that topic, still maintaining that climate and that climate economy nexus, but then introducing COVID-19 to that situation, given the widespread disruptions that we're seeing and will continue to see come out of this emergency. At ARCA, we are also exploring other ways to go virtual. As many of you have likely seen, CAF is also, postponed to 2021, and we're currently thinking about how we can try to help folks stay engaged during this additional off year for CAF. So, yeah, I'll leave it there. I'm happy, if folks are scratching their heads at how to move things to virtual or anything like that, feel free to reach out, as we have a pretty substantial experience on that front.
Great, thank you. That's Julia Kim, who's with both ARCA and the alliance of the 8 chapters around the state and with BayCAN. Who else hasn't had a chance to speak up yet? We'd like to hear from you. You're giving us your time here, so things that BayCAN could do in the next few weeks to help you out, helpful tips you might have for others on the call.
So, Bruce, at the end of the line, this is Carl Anthony. I'd like to have my hand is up again.
Okay, good. I'll get back to you, Carl, in just a minute. Yeah, let's see. I want to get a couple of people in here who haven't had a chance so far. Jennifer, Emily, Nathan, Leslie, Brianne, any of you want to chime in and either ask for some help with something or give us a hint on something you think is working on your end? Okay, Carl, take the floor.
Well, I also wanted to announce, I don't know whether Paloma made a mention of this, but we are having a meeting with an organization that is really addressing the issues of education and how we build curriculum that actually expresses some of the challenges around climate change and climate justice. And this meeting is going to be this month on April the 20th, I believe. And it would be really a wonderful thing if we could figure out how to engage BayCAN with the shaping of the kind of curriculum through K through 12 and maybe even the university level curriculum that addresses the issues that we've been concerned about so that we can build the constituencies there. And so I think the most important thing is that we are having a session. We've been working on this for about a year, or 2 years actually, and we're having a charrette of environmental justice issues. And if we could get a connection to BayCAN that would put this on their agenda, many of the things that we've been talking about would also affect our educational system.
Absolutely. So let me talk with you offline about that, Carl, and see how BayCAN could help out. And also, some of the other ARCA chapters have done work more than we have with K-12, and some of our members have. So let's talk offline, and we'll see if we can help with that.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. Others, we have just a few minutes left. Again, we thank you for your time here today, and we know it's a extraordinary time. I will say we sent out an article, the first one, and we can, as I said, compile more on how the state of California, Office of Emergency Services, and Sonoma County and some others are starting to look at COVID-19 and wildfires, because as you can see, we're getting to the wildfire season pretty quickly here. And there's a lot of concern about conflicts between strategies that would work for wildfires, for evacuations, for smoke events, for the PSPS, and conflicts with the kinds of things we're doing, obviously, with the, quote, shelter in place that we're doing, or social distancing that we're doing now and going to be doing for a number of weeks. So it was good to see that some of our agencies are looking at that. We just wanted to make you aware that there are some of those discussions going on, and the same kinds of things could eventually go on. This is something maybe BayCAN could get into later. We could look at sea level rise and flooding and drought and heat and the other impacts, and try to look ahead and see where these strategies that work for COVID-19 and for the pandemic would run up against the kinds of things that we may have to implement this summer, say for a large heat wave. And certainly for, we're edging into a drought here again, folks, as you know, in California, despite the fact that we had some nice rain over the last day or two. So that's going on, and we're going to keep our eye on those kinds of things. Again, these links that are possible between the COVID emergency and the climate emergency. So we have just a couple minutes left. Any other comments or questions that people would like to pose for the group here?
Yeah, this is Julia. I do apologize. Hopefully this isn't something that someone already shared. I had to drop off in the middle of the call, unfortunately, but this is more so related to COVID. I just shared a link through the chat function. The National League of Cities pulled together a tracker for local policies, actions in responding to COVID. I know many of the jurisdictions that we're working with here at LGC are in full-on triage mode. So hopefully, if you're not aware of that resource, you can take a look, and hopefully it'll be helpful for you.
Great, thank you. I'll get the link. Pardon?
Can the person who just spoke identify themselves again, please?
That was Julia Kim from ARCA and BayCAN, and Julia will send the link to me, and I'll include it. Okay.
Hi, this is Leslie Reagan with the Town Court of Madera.
Hi, Leslie.
Hi, this is similar to Sarah's point at the very beginning, and I was hoping that she could share her resources, but we're dealing with the Caltrans grant, and so we're not sure what the deadlines will look like, or how, if we'll be able to push out our community workshops, but also how do we create meaningful community workshops virtually, especially with a demographic might not be as excited to engage via computer.
Yeah, I think that's a fabulous question. If anybody has a quick answer for Leslie on that or some ideas, that's one. And two, we could compile your answers. That's going to be a good question for a lot of people of how do you make it equitable and accessible. Sarah, it looks like you're ready to talk.
Yeah, thanks, Leslie. And I think we're all, this is a challenge that I've heard a number of people share. I put in the chat, the International Association of Public Participation is convening webinars on this topic. So that tells us a couple of things. One is they're convening people to ask the question. They don't really have answers at this point, but they are compiling resources. So that webinar is on next Tuesday. Also, our team is involved with Government Alliance on Sustainability and Urban Sustainability Directors Network. So any resources that we see from those entities on this topic, because they're both contending with it and it's one of the major topics, Alameda County, I can bring those back to BayCAN. And it seems like there's enough interest, maybe we would want to set up a conversation or webinar. We can discuss that. Let us know if that's interesting. One quick thing I can say from our experience is that we did some community engagement, some focus groups and surveys with frontline communities that are going to be most impacted by wildfire smoke. So it was a particular group, including outdoor workers, unsheltered, undocumented folks. What we heard is that community members often, as you're saying, don't have, a lot of like Facebook or online interest or capacity, and that actually text and phone are good ways to reach them. So I haven't seen a lot of good resources to engage on those on text and phone, but I think that's a possibility. You can keep talking.
Thank you.
And if there are others that can throw in resources, I'd love to hear them.
Yeah, and maybe that's something we can compile as well. It is going to be a real issue for everyone going forward, no matter how long this lasts. Okay, well, thank you all very much for being with us today. This has been BayCAN special meeting number 1. You have my email. You can email me anytime, or you have my phone number too in the signature from the emails. I'd be happy to hear from you with your questions as we go through this extraordinary time, and or your suggestions as to what BayCAN can do, or suggestions you could share with the group. So thank you very much. We have recorded this, so for people that you run into that weren't able to make it, you can tell them it'll be recorded or has been recorded, and we'll post it. Right. We'll send out a link with that very soon. We're going to have a similar webinar tomorrow, or meeting tomorrow at 1 o'clock. Thursday, and the meeting invite went out for that one as well. Thank you very much for being with us, and stay well, everybody. Be healthy.
Thank you, Bruce. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you.
All right.